Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here tonight. It's kind of a conclusion for a process that's been going on since April. That is to deal directly with the budget for the following year. That's why we're here tonight, to have a public hearing for that. I want to thank each of you that's present to take of your time to be here and to offer your assistance and contributions and all of that. But I also want to say this, that all of us ought to be thankful to the people that's paying these taxes, and those are the taxpayers, all of you included in that. But many times we forget the ones that's footing the bill. But I want, as for this board, express my appreciation to the taxpayers. I call this meeting to order. We'll have our roll call.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Farley is out tonight. He had a medical procedure this afternoon and couldn't make it.
Motion to be excused.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Now let's stand and have our invocation and pledge, please.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you this evening for your many blessings upon us. We thank you once again for the opportunity of assembling as a community. We thank you, Father, for each one that is here this evening. We pray that we might do your business in a way that is pleasing to you. Guide and direct us as we make decisions and finalize the budget for the coming year. We pray these blessings in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
If you'll face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. So ordered. All right, Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, tonight, as the chairman's already mentioned, is the public hearing for the upcoming fiscal year budget beginning July 1 for fiscal year 2018-2019. Tonight it kind of is the capstone of a lot of activity that's gone on within the organization and on this board over really the past year, beginning back last fall, beginning with our CIP process for our capital improvement plan that the departments submitted back in December. Board of Commissioners had a workshop in January, which really began the planning process for this budget. From there, budgets were submitted by departments in the February-March timeframe. April, the Board of Commissioners held budget workshops in this room to hear the proposed recommended budget, and then that budget was tweaked, which brings us to tonight, being the June the 5th public hearing on this budget. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation to run through real quick. It's a cliff notes of what has been presented in the past. For the board's benefit, you've got 3 different documents in front of you. First of all, you've got the PowerPoint that will be shown on the screen for the public. You have a copy of what we call the budget message, which is basically just is a multi-page document describing the budget that's being laid out. Lastly, you have what we call the budget ordinance, the 3rd document, and that is the official document that when and if the board decides to act on this budget, this would be the legal document that puts this budget into place. It gives the taxing authority for the levying of taxes.
Excuse me. Said the microphones are not working.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe the people need to hear what you're saying, so let's see if we can remedy that.
Just
Can you hear now?
now?
Okay. I can start over. How much did?
Don't start over.
Okay. So again, the commissioners have 3 documents in front of them. The PowerPoint you're going to see on the screens, the budget message, which is a condensed version of the overall budget, then the budget ordinance, which is the legal document that when and if the board decides to adopt the budget, actually puts the budget into effect, authorizes the collection of the taxes, and setting forth of the expenditures within the budget for all the different funds that are identified. So the next slide, if we can. The priorities of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners have pretty much for a very long time have always been with education on top, public safety second, economic development, human services, facility and space needs, infrastructure improvements, and recreational activities. These are all priorities, but some rank higher than others. The guiding principles for the budget development, and these guiding principles for the most part really carry us year to year. We've got the addresses the stated priorities of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners that I just read off. It continues the concept of base budgeting, maintains service levels with limited expansion, considers structural balance within the budget, and has continued reliance on fund balance appropriation, even though we continue to remain within the board's set established policy of 18 to 20% fund balance. Okay, next. In terms of budget highlights, it maintains the ad valorem tax rate of 69.6 cents. It resets the collection target on delinquent taxes from prior years where we've been very successful in getting the delinquent taxes collected. This resets that target and makes a correction that we had experienced in the current year's budget. Increases funding for education, both Pitt County schools and to PCC. Increases staffing for EMS and human services. Within EMS is paid for within that enterprise fund as such, and within human services, I think the 6 positions we added, majority of those monies are paid 50 to 75% via federal funding. It does include what we call a market adjustment, or otherwise known as a COLA for our workforce, be a 2% effective January 1, so basically it's a delayed market adjustment, but it is a market adjustment. We also continue our merit pay system, or our pay for performance system that we've had in place for many years. It does include a health insurance premium increase, as well as other changes to our health insurance program. Being a self-insured program, we have no choice but to cover our costs and try to manage those costs the best way we can. And just as a side note, we did look at going out on the market and actually purchasing insurance, and it was going to be $2 million more on a $10 or $11 million plan to do that. So the self-insured mode is the best way to go. This budget also includes the maintenance costs for our radio and paging enhancement project that we just put into place that we're scheduled to be implemented. So next, so the revised recommended budget for 2018-19, if you look at the adopted budget for current year, $245,977,633. Recommended budget is down $235,651,070. This is a 4.2% negative change reduction in the current year. The major factor in this reduction is the state took over the daycare portion of the DSS budget. It was about a $7 million expense, which there were no county dollars in. Okay, moving on. In terms of what we started with within the general fund, and the general fund, as part of this overall budget picture of a $235 million budget, the general fund is the major component of the budget that drives the ad valorem property tax rate. The original request, we came in at $176,404,218. We actually reduced those requests by $9.7 million, bringing it down to, within the general fund, $166,662,791. And the revenues projected was, with the tax rate remaining constant, within the general fund it's 68.9. There's a 0.7 that goes to economic development, and this also includes a $3.5 million fund balance appropriation. And as we've always stated in the past, our fund balance, we normally spend 98% of our budget, 2% falls back, so thus normally, in most cases, we don't spend that fund balance, it falls back to our savings. So the adopted budget for this year at $174 million comes to a percent decrease change within the general fund of 4.54%. Okay, moving on. The revisions made to the budget since the workshop, we did add the 6 positions within DSS after hearing some board feedback, and also added the market adjustment, again effective January 1, 2019 for the Pitt County workforce. Now moving to the revenue highlight section of the presentation. On revenues, we have a pie chart showing ad valorem taxes, other taxes, intergovernmental taxes. You can tell that the majority of the funding comes from ad valorem taxes, being over 50%. The next table then is the breakout in dollars of those revenue sources for the overall budget, $235 million budget. You can see ad valorem taxes come in at $95,702,782, and you can see the breakout of the other revenues that are appropriated to balance the budget. The ad valorem tax rate, again, remains constant at 69.6 cents, and which is the same as the current rate in the current year's budget. Proposed distribution, 68.9 goes to the general fund for general fund operations at 88.4 million. 7/10 of a penny goes to the industrial development fund for economic development purposes, representing almost $900,000 for the total of $89,322,000. The property tax base in Pitt County, all the property that is taxable versus non-taxable property in the current year that we're sitting in for 17-18 has a value of about $12.6 billion. The estimated increase in that base a year later from a year ago is $12.9 billion. It represents about a 2.2% increase, or about a $280,537,603 increase to taxable property that's been put on the books in Pitt County. There were a number of proposed fee changes that were covered with the board in the workshops. These included fee increases for environmental health, as well as solid waste and recycling. Moving on to expenditure revenue highlights. Again, we have a pie chart in the next slide that will show our highlights of appropriations by percentage. And you can see general government is 16.72. The highlight of this chart is about 2/3 of the way down, where education is 25.34%, which is the highest percentage amount. Last year, I believe Human Services kind of beat out education, but because we've now taken the DSS daycare dollars down by $7 million, we have education back up to the #1 slot that we have a goal for. In the next slide is the breakout of all those expenditures, everything from within general government, public safety, reading on down the list, again matching back to the $235,651,070. In terms of education funding, the next chart gets a little complicated, but in the current year's budget for fiscal year 17-18, you can see the current expense appropriation is $38,630,807. There was a request of $43,245,325. The recommendation is for $39,210,269. The Capital 1, 2, and 3 monies for the school system remain constant at $1 million as requested. The rent amount for the Pitt County office building remains constant at $340,000. So the total in the last column recommended for Pitt County schools is $40,550,269. That's the first time we've actually went over the $40 million amount with all those, the current expense, the Capital 1, 2, and 3, and rent combined. This represents an increase of $579,462, representing a 1.5% increase. Do note in the bottom of the slide that there is the Board of Commissioners the budget does account for a one-time appropriation of Article 46 sales tax proceeds in the amount of almost $1 million for school security purposes. And this is basically, as I understand, the school system will use this for corridor safety improvements for those schools that do not have that feature. Did want to note before I move on here, I did receive correspondence yesterday from the school system as they analyzed the state budget that was just adopted, that they were saying that based upon the county's appropriation, they would be short about $138,803 compared to the appropriation or the increase of $579,462. Just bring that out for the board's purpose, just as an FYI. They can obviously, within that $40.5 million, figure out how to deal with the $138,000 or use fund balance. On the next slide for Pitt Community College, again, a similar slide. The current expense is currently $5,809,539. They requested $6,643,328, recommended $5,888,438. Their capital expense is $100,000, which is being continued, and so a total being recommended of $5,988,438. This is a $78,000 $889 increase, representing 1.36%. Even though it appears as if not everything is being funded as requested, again, this has a footnote as well. There's an additional $794,230 being funded for Pitt Community College for their deferred maintenance projects. The majority of their funding request was for deferred maintenance projects. We had 2 or 3 prior capital projects that had funds sitting in them that we have combined and are closing out. As long as those funds are used for brick and mortar or deferred maintenance, they can be used for that purpose. So in essence, Pitt Community College has been fully funded with their request. Moving on to the total education funding, including debt service. For Pitt County Schools, again, we're at $40,550,269. Pitt Community College, $5,988,438. In the school capital reserve is $6,129,782. Article 46 sales tax reserve, $6,292,861. And school improvement projects, $750,000. So a total of all education funding of $59,711,350. Moving to another area within the budget, being public safety, specifically fire and EMS. Within the EMS district fund, this budget, which is separate and apart from the general fund, has been recommended by the EMS Oversight Committee as appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. It's based upon a rate of 4.6 cents. There's no change in that rate. It's held constant, and the EMS tax is charged to all citizens in Pitt County, excluding those who live in the corporate limits of the city of Greenville, since they handle their own EMS services. This EMS budget continues the capital replacement plan for vehicles, whether replacement or remounting of vehicles. Within the EMS budget, the table here illustrates how it is broken out on the revenue versus expenditure side. Revenues being recommended in the far right-hand column, $6,007,314. Expenditures match same amount, $6,007,314. You can see that of the all the nonprofit squads, we have 10 different EMS squads in Pitt County. 8 are ran by nonprofit organizations, and they are receiving an increase this year with the recommended appropriation. Within the fire fund, on the next slide, this represents the 20 different volunteer fire departments that exist in Pitt County government, that the county government contracts with these nonprofit fire departments to provide fire service in the unincorporated parts of Pitt County. We do have 5 fire departments who are requesting a tax increase. Okay. Moving on, actually this slide here gives you the 5 different departments. It'll be the Ayden, Belvoir, Farmville, Grifton, and Pacatolas. You can see the current rate exhibited on the displays compared to the new rate. Moving on to the CIP portion of the budget, the capital improvement plan. Our 10-year plan includes a total expenditure of $31,944,000. For fiscal year 18-19, the project total is $2,390,000. There are 8 projects recommended, and of the 2.4 million, $2 million of it will be refunded out of current funding or pay-as-you-go, and $300,000 will be financed through a 3-year bank loan. And on the next chart, we illustrate what we will be spending these monies on in terms of specific projects. Within general government, you have the capital project maintenance, or capital facilities capital maintenance of $220,000. This would be anything from roofs, carpet, boilers, chillers, type of things that are identified to need to be replaced. Security improvements, as we continue to tighten the security access into buildings, we have $50,000 appropriated for that purpose. The MIS, Management Information Systems, network internet security upgrade is a big expense, $300,000. In this age of cybersecurity issues and problems, this is a need that needs to be addressed and implemented. Within public safety, within the EMS fund, we have $350,000 for either the remounting or replacements of ambulances. Within education, we have for Pitt County Schools, $1 million for the Capital 1, 2, and 3 projects. PCC, the $100,000 for the similar purpose. Environmental protection within our solid waste and recycling department. We have a rubber tire loader being replaced at $250,000. That is, again, paid for out of an enterprise fund, separate and apart from the general fund. Again, totaling back to the $2.3, $2.4 million as previously identified. That is almost the end of my comments. I do have one other comment before opening to the public hearing, and just wanted to recapture, I guess, some earlier conversations this board had with the Board of Education regarding school security. And again, this budget does recommend, actually we've already taken action on appropriating the $988,000 out of the quarter-cent sales tax for Pitt County schools to work on the corridors. So that action, even though it's part of this budget, has already been implemented because the dollars are in hand, and those dollars have been, in essence, passed to the school system. The General Assembly, having just passed its statewide budget, did make some considerations in there for school security. I believe they appropriated $50,000 directly to Pitt County for SRO purposes. They've also created a pot of money, a $12 million pot, to be used statewide, which is basically a drop in the bucket for SROs, school resource officers, that if a unit of local government, i.e., let's say the school system, puts up $1, the state would put up $2. So it'll be something, I guess, the school system will need to evaluate as to whether they want to expand the SROs within the school system. Currently, I believe there are 13 or 14 SROs. There was an identified need for an additional 25. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have, and that's the recommended budget.
Okay. If there's no further comments about the presentation, then I declare the public hearing open. Do we have any people signed up for this, Mr. Manning?
Yes, sir. We have 4 people signed up. The first name just says Pitt County Schools Educators. There's not necessarily, unless there's the people under it are. Was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the attorney will read our policy on public hearings.
Sure. Pitt County welcomes all comments on matters of public concern. Each person will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address prior to speaking. All comments should be informative and constructive. Inappropriate comments will not be tolerated. Oh, it's a public hearing. You're right. 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Allie Setzer. I'm the principal of HB Sugg and Sam D. Bundy in Farmville. I'm here on behalf, and I have our principal, Dr. Sheena Caton, and my counselor, Kelly Joyner, here. I wanted to start off with saying thank you for your investment in education. So first off, thank you. As a principal, I know what it's like to have a very limited budget and have to work magic with that budget, and how you're going to disappoint someone no matter what you do, but you prioritize. And so it really means a lot to us to see that your 2 top priorities are education and public safety. So let me first thank you for that. On May 16th, about 25,000 educators and supporters of educators went to Raleigh and stormed to say that they've had enough. And a lot of people feel like it's about teacher pay, but I don't think it's about teacher pay. I think we have teachers working in schools that are doing more with less. I think we're in need of more social workers, more nurses, more teacher assistants, more SROs, counselors, assistant principals. My teachers are doing the very best that they can with what they've got. Looking at education and looking at the budget, Pitt County Schools has about a $690,000 deficit in our budget, which means about 14 positions would be lost. One thing I'd like to speak on tonight is in Farmville, my Farmville community has stepped up and backed our schools, and they have written a grant to put an SRO officer in each one of our schools. I would challenge each community to do the same. What I can speak on behalf of is these officers are in each of my schools. I'm an elementary principal. I'm not used to having an SRO in my building. He's actually a community impact officer. My students see him every day. They don't know when he's there investigating something or when he's walking through their classes to greet them. They're not alarmed to see a police officer there. It's nice for me to have him there with things like custody issues, that he can be there to help and support. The other thing, Chief Green comes to my school. The children don't call him Chief Green. They call him Coach Donnie. He builds relationships in that community, which helps support our schools. Jason Tyndall is my sergeant who's there every day. He's one of my right hands. He helps make me feel safe. And though corridors are wonderful and that is a safety precaution, when you look at the news and everything that's happened, who has saved children and lives? And it's people, and it's officers there on campus who act quickly and make the right call. So I would urge an investment in our education system for public safety. Many of our children are coming to school with many traumas and problems, and so when we're talking about needing more counselors, more social workers, you know, we see on the news these children and all the signs are there that something bad was about to happen, and you say, how did this happen? Didn't people see it? We don't always have the staff and personnel to advocate for all the resources that we need. So we're asking for an investment to keep our schools safe. All of us are here for academics and wanting excellence for our students, but I think all of us, whether you're educators or not, our number one priority is safety. We send our children to school, and we hope that they come home safe every day from school. That needs to be a priority. I'm speaking from an elementary point of view, so I invited one of my colleagues who's a high school principal.
Good evening. I'm Sheena Caton. I'm the principal at Aiken-Grifton High School. With Aiken-Grifton High School, we have 700 students, so I'm going to kind of talk about things that I see on a daily basis within Aiken-Grifton High School. First of all, I would like to let you know that according to the American School Counselor Association, that's a national model for school counselors, they recommend one counselor for every 250 students. At Aiken-Grifton High School, I'm the smallest of the 6 traditional high schools in Pitt County. We also have 2 early colleges. With that being said, I have 2 counselors for 700 students. Some of the things that you might not be aware of, the things that you see in the news are what we are dealing with on a daily basis within our schools. For example, these are some of the things that we would see. Of course, conflict resolution. Many of our students do not know the difference between conflict resolution and bullying and how to handle those type of things. The appropriateness of social media and the things that result of not being appropriate on social media. We have also, of course, we have students who have witnessed murders. Those are things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. We have students who are struggling with their sexual identity. We have students who have been hospitalized due to in mental facilities that are coming back to us. We have students who are diagnosed with schizophrenia. We have students who have been molested. We have students who have been raped. And we also have students who have anxiety issues on a daily basis and do not know how to deal with life, school, or everything that comes at them every day. And we also have students that are drug dependent. And I'm the smallest of the high schools. So these are the things that we are dealing with all the time. So that's some of the things that we need to do for more counselors to help us with school safety within our school. Because school safety is going to start with us at our school because we have to identify those needs and we have to be able to get the additional resources for our students. So I also would like to say that I see that public public safety was also something that you stressed for education as well. And by us being community partners, that could help education as well, because it all starts with education. If we start to do the things that we need to in our schools, then we can help with the school safety as well as safety within our community. So, turn it.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Joyner, and I am the school counselor at H.B. Sugg Elementary School. For those of you who may not be aware, that is a pre-K to 2nd grade school. It's interesting for me to hear my colleagues talk about the issues that they see in high school, because we actually see that in elementary, a lot of these issues as well. I'll touch on the fact that she mentioned that our American School Counseling Association recommends that we have a 250 student to 1 for every 1 counselor ratio. Currently, my ratio is 1 to 430 students. That's just my pre-K to 2nd grade students. In Pitt County, we have only about 66 counselors for over 24,000 students. I mentioned this because we are often tasked, and they also recommend too that we have 80% of our time spent directly with students. However, with things, positions and funding cut, there are things administratively that we're often asked to do. We lead many teams in our school. We're in charge of 504s. We are often the connection to other student services personnel, which I think is very unique about school counselors. We are the only student services personnel that are there in our buildings every single day. So we're charged with having to collaborate with our nurses, with our school psychologists, with our mental health therapists, with our parents, with our exceptional children's teachers and department. So we are often the ones leading the charge in that and making the connections to all of these resources within the community. I myself have put in place another service at my school where we work to help children who are ADHD to get their forms that are needed at their physicians in a smoother process so we don't see a decrease in medication and therefore more absences and more behaviors and discipline issues increase. They've mentioned trauma. You'll be hearing that more from Pitt County Schools. As you may have heard of the ACEs study, that's the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. According to Brenda Ingram, 1 out of every 4 children attending school in the United States has experienced a trauma. That affects both their academics, it affects their social emotional skills, and it affects just their ability to cope. According to the CDC, 1 out of every 7 United States children ages 2 to 8 years old has had a diagnosis of either a mental health diagnosis, a behavioral, or developmental disorder. That's a lot of our students. I personally have worked with children as young as 5 years old who have been hospitalized in mental health agencies due to mental health issues, and then they return right back to our school, and then the cycle starts again. I can't express how much I thank you. I know that often now schools have become the first place that parents call as well, not the physician, not a family member that they may have called. Usually the school is who the parent's calling, reaching out for help. So I'll speak for them as well, and thank you for listening to us, and we appreciate what you have invested.
Thank you, ladies. On behalf of the children and students that y'all teach and affect, we want to thank you 3 also. Next, Mr. Mann.
Okay, next we have Kylene Dibble.
Hi, my name is Kylene Dibble, and I'm here as the Executive Director of Parents for Public Schools of Pitt County, but also as the parent of 2 children in Pitt County schools. And before I start, I want to say that the budget that you just showed is really proof that your job is incredibly difficult. So I do want to thank you for being willing to do this job because you have very tough decisions to make. I also want to say that with me in the audience today are several parents from across Pitt County who are supporting what we're supporting tonight, which is really the best education possible for our children, especially in terms of safety. So recently, I've had a lot of conversations with my elementary school age daughters about how safe they feel at school and really in the world in general. We've had talks about everything from lockdown drills to what to do if there's a fire at home or school. And the overall theme of our conversation ends like this: all of the adults in your life are working together as a team to keep you safe. So when my kindergarten daughter came home from school recently and told me there was a lockdown drill, I asked her if she was scared, and she just said, "No, my teachers are part of that team you told me about that are keeping me safe." She wasn't worried at all. Each year, Parents for Public Schools conducts numerous conversations, we had 21 this year, with members of our community to find out what they think is going well and could be improved in the school system. And not surprisingly, especially in the past few months, safety was an issue that came up often. They, of course, mentioned wanting physical improvements like installing secure entry corridors, and we are very grateful that you have provided the funding to make that possible, so thank you for that. They also talked about the need to serve the whole child, agreeing that academics need to be the focus, but they longed for more people that their children could have relationships with. And as you can imagine, those included staff like social workers, guidance counselors, school resource officers. I was personally pleased to hear parents say that not only does it make them feel safer to see an SRO in the school, but it makes them feel more welcome at that school. They noted that these individuals build relationships with them and their children, and those relationships are a strong preventative measure to the terrifying events we've seen happening in schools across our country recently. In addition, the people involved with our schools, from teachers to administrators to guidance counselors, social workers, resource officers, they create a conducive educational environment for students to learn and teachers to teach without interruptions and distractions. I've been thinking a lot about this concept of safety being a team effort, and I'm so thankful for the village of people in my life who keep my children safe. But I wonder if they're enough. Can we really work together to keep our kids safe all the time? What else could we do? I have to say I felt this sense of teamwork last month when the Board of Education and the county commissioners came together to talk about improvements on school safety. That meeting helped me confirm to my children that what I'm saying is true. All of the adults in their lives, even their county leaders, are working together to keep them safe. And that's why I urge you, as key decision makers in our community, to strongly consider the funding for the full budget that Pitt County Schools has asked for. I attend every Board of Education meeting. I've heard them talk about measures they've taken to tighten the budget, and I know there are a few places left to make cuts. So that makes me worry that the places left to make cuts are people, staff, individuals who are part of my team to keep my children, your neighbors' children safe. And when we cut people, we cut relationships. And when we cut relationships, we cut safety mechanisms that need to be strengthened and not weakened. So as I close today, I speak to you not only as the ED of Parents for Public Schools, but also as the mom of a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I urge you to help me continue sending that message to my children and all children in Pitt County. I urge you to support the Pitt County Schools' request for funding of safety in their schools, as well as funding that would allow them to just continue the great work they already do on a daily basis. A top priority on my list would be school resource officers, guidance counselors, social workers. Those are the people who make up my village and help me keep my children safe. I know we can't guarantee their safety 100% of the time, but I think we owe it to them to do our very best to try. So thank you for your time today, and truly I thank you for your service to our community and what it does to make this community such a great place to live. Thanks and have a great evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, next we have Melissa Adamson.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Adamson. I live in Greenville on 6th Street. I'm vice chair of Parents for Public Schools, but I've got 2 kids. One of them is getting ready to graduate Rose High School on Friday, which is pretty exciting. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today about my perspective and what is important to me. I realize that county commissioners do not have an easy job. You make difficult decisions with increasing demands and often with not enough funding. But safety, and especially school safety, is on everyone's minds right now. I'd like to acknowledge and thank you for providing funds to place security entry corridors in all the schools that don't have them. And after the Parkland shooting, my son and I, who's getting ready to graduate, had a really interesting conversation about this issue. And we talked about what he should do if he heard gunshots in his school. And we talked about the likelihood of a school shooting happening in his high school. Sorry. We talked about why school shootings happen. And I have to tell you, it's a really, really hard conversation to have with your child. We also talked about whether or not he feels safe. And the answer to that question is yes, he does feel safe. And I asked him why he feels safe. And he feels safe because Rose takes lockdown drills very seriously. Those don't scare him. They make him feel safer. He feels safe because of the presence of school resource officers in his school. He feels safe because of the teachers and all of the staff there that work really, really hard to build connections with all the schools, or with all the students that are there within the school community. Even though it's a hard conversation to have, I think it's important that we have it as a family and that we have this conversation as a community. And we're not going to be able to keep our kids safe without the support of the Pitt County Schools request. If it's not fully funded, this will cut people. And it's the very people that my kid identified as the individuals and the systems that help him feel safe in his school. I'd like to advocate for any increase necessary for all the people required to keep our kids safe. School counselors, school resource officers, school social workers, those are the people that help keep our kids safe. I know these measures cost money that we don't have, but I can't accept that as a reason not to support the request. We need to figure out a way to make it happen. I need to know that our community is doing everything necessary to prevent tragedies like this that happened in Parkland, Florida, and Santa Fe, Texas, and Noblesville, Indiana, from happening in Greenville or Winterville or Ayden or Stokes or Bethel or Farmville or anywhere in Pitt County. You might be thinking that my son's graduating, so I don't have to worry about this anymore, but I also have a 3-year-old little girl who in a couple of short years, she's going to be entering into her public school career, which is why I feel compelled to advocate for fully funding the request of the Pitt County Schools to be able to provide that additional personnel. And I don't want to have that same conversation with her that I had to have with her brother. But if I do, I want to be able to look at her and tell her with confidence that the decision makers in our community are doing whatever it takes to put the people in place that will make her and all of the students here safe. So I'm sorry that I get emotional, but it's really important that I'm able to say that to her. So thank you for everything that you've done so far, and thank you for hearing me out tonight.
You don't need to apologize for that. Your presence is well taken. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else, Scott?
Yes, Dr. Ethan Linker.
Good evening, Commissioners. As County Manager, Mr. Elliott. Just wanted to take a quick second. First of all, I've got several board members here with me this evening. I appreciate their support for our budget process and supporting you in this budget process. I also like to thank my principals, several of my parents that are with us this evening to help us with our public schools here in Pitt County, and our counselor who put it so just right to the point, what's going on in our schools with our kids every day. But I wanted just a couple quick things. One, the $988,000 that you allotted at your May meeting, that money has been put to use. We have already ordered everything for our high schools. Those bids have been back. We have ordered pieces for our high schools, the buzzer systems, the entryway corridors. Those are already have been ordered. Just like every other school system, though, we're all having a little bit of a delay getting those pieces, but we're told those will be here by the beginning of August, and we'll have those in place. Since then, we have gone back and sent out a second group of schools that have been designed. So those entryway corridors should be going out for bid in the next day or so. So we'll have another group, and those schools would be like CMEPS, Elmhurst, GR Whitfield, some of the more open, Grifton, some of the more open campus styles we have. So those bids will be going out as well. And then, of course, we'll continue that process throughout the next several months till we get all those in place. So appreciate that. I want to make two quick comments. One, with the state budget, a couple things came out of that. One, our local, we divide our budget up. We always divide it up into fixed costs, where we might like to expand, and some capital needs. But the fixed costs, because of the local budget, they did change the retirement aspect. So for us, that was the $138,000 increase of fixed cost numbers that we would have. So that actually puts us about $690,000 short in our original request, just for your information. The next thing, I would just go back and talk about the SRO piece. A little over a month ago, we had a great meeting. We discussed our school resource officers. We discussed school safety. We discussed, what options we'd want to look at. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was, let's wait and see what the state does. Hopefully there would be something there. And as Mr. Elliott said, $12 million for SROs across the state of North Carolina is obviously not anywhere near enough. And we're talking $2 million just for Pitt County, a little over maybe $2.2 million for Pitt County. So, but in the budget, it did have $12 million of reoccurring dollars that is on a 2-to-1 match. So if we come up with, I've reversed Mr. Elliott's plan and say if the county commissioners give us $1, then then the state would give us 2, you know. So if we have $400,000, that would give us 1.2 million. So that is one way to help fund some of these things. And that conversation I'm having with as many town managers across this county that'll listen to me. Plus, I'm still having the conversations about where our additional municipalities could help us with our SROs. So we're not just having the conversation with you. I've had meetings with 1, 2, 3, and I still have one more to go. Town managers across the county, Pitt County as a whole. So, but just wanted you to know the timing is awful. As far as the state budget comes out on Friday with all this stuff in there, and by the time, and we still don't know what the grant process looks like, so we're still trying to figure it out. But we are working on options. One of the things I've done is I've met with some individuals who could look at contracted services or private security firms for SROs. That actually would save the county about $1 million. So I've been able to reach out to Chief of Police in the city of Greenville, just to get his thoughts. I've reached out to Sheriff Elks. Have not had the pleasure of getting together yet, but we will, I'm sure, in the day or so, just to talk about that as a possibility. And also then bring in the city of Greenville and Winterville and everybody else in the community to see what options there are. So I just want to make sure we knew that those options were available on for the state SRO as part of the grant package, 2-to-1 federal, state to local dollars. There is money in the, as I shared with Mr. Elliott, for the counselor positions we talked about, but that is non-reoccurring dollars. I'm not sure how you hire individuals with non-reoccurring dollars. That's a little scary. So we're actually focusing right now on our SRO situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lincoln. Wait just a minute, sir.
Yes, sir.
If there's no other people that desire to speak as part of the public hearing, then I declare the public hearing closed. But I believe we got a board member that might have a question for you, Dr.
Yes,
Lincoln. Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to ask this question. I'm curious, very curious, about the red light funds that the school system has received from Greenview.
Yes. Well, technically, I think at this point we're
wanted to know
right
how it was
about
applied.
$400,000, but as you have probably read in the paper numerous times, that lawsuit was filed almost immediately back in February. It was dismissed in April, maybe toward the end of April, and then about 2 days later, the lawsuit was filed again. So all those numbers all those dollars, excuse me, are tied up in litigation at this point. And we're still trying to figure out how safe it is to spend those dollars.
So it's sitting.
Yes.
But the money's still
That
there. The
answer
money
your
is still there.
Yes.
That answer your question, Mary?
Yes, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that
All right.
opportunity.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Lincoln.
you.
Yes, sir.
We want to thank your board members for being here too, that you brought with you, and the teachers and everyone that's been and expressed their opinion. I was taken back a little bit about the emotion because I've always felt that a person with emotion is an illustration of what they are and what they talk about. This is specifically a young lady that got a little emotional, but never be fearful of expressing what you have to say with your emotions. Having said that, get off the preacher's box a while. We've been here for this public hearing. The public hearing has been closed. The issues now are in the hands of the board members. What's the pleasures of the board members?
I like the budget the way it is. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Miss Mary.
I like the fact that we have our priorities in order, and I like the budget that we move to approve it.
That's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Having a motion been made and seconded, now we're open for discussion from the board members. Any discussion from the board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Tom?
I mean, we've discussed it, and the board has already expressed to me numerous times that they don't agree with me, but Scott, how much is our fund balance? How many $1 million are actually in the fund balance? Not percentage, how many millions? 43, 44, 42 million, something like that?
Brian, can you confirm that number?
Available fund balance is sitting at roughly 21 million.
That's available. What's the total?
The total available, well, there's a certain amount of fund balance that's not available to be spent.
I understand that, but what's the total?
Right now, according to your policy, 27.
Anyway, I thought it was a little bit more than that, but if we have an incident in Pitt County, there is no amount of money in that fund balance going to make me feel better if we have children get killed here because we got a nut out there. We know we have 37 schools, and of those 37, 26 of them are unprotected at all times. People do not agree with me that teachers that are well-armed, well-trained should be able to help protect, that want to do it, should be able to help protect. That's an issue, and I think that we're missing a big one there. My daughter's a perfect example. She's a good shot, and she teaches high school biology and advanced biology and chemistry at Panther Creek and up in Cary. And she would love to be able to carry a gun. And nobody knows she's got it, except for maybe the administration. But in any case, that's another story. But the thing is, we're not going to have that. That's not going to happen. That hurdle's down the road a ways. But we need to spend more right now. That's my opinion. Therefore, I will not vote for this budget tonight because I do not believe, even though we've tried to step up and spend more and do more, I do not believe it is sufficient. And that if something happens in this county, I do not want my yes vote trying to be explained away that, gee, I wanted to have a bigger fund balance. And that's my opinion.
Thank you, Tom. Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm not ready to vote on the budget primarily because we don't have a full board tonight. I think every member should be present for it, and we have till July 1st. But secondly, I don't think it goes far enough. We've been talking about school security for a while, and I think there should be a school resource officer in every school, regardless of how we have to rework things or find the money to do that. And there's different ways we can do that, but I think that discussion needs to be had. And in total, I mentioned this before, but we need to start looking at a budget that is different than the way we've done it in the past. Like I said at one of the meetings before, we're a community that has had over a 20% poverty rate for over 30 years. What we've been doing is not working. And now we've had growth, but it has not been growth in people who are paying taxes. Just to be blunt, most of our growth is coming from people who are coming here for services, because we do provide services at a high level. But we're not, and you look at our 2% revenue increase, it should be higher than that. And we need to diversify the way we do our industrial development. We maybe need to combine some services with municipalities. We need to be more creative in what we do, and we need to become a community of choice. That means safer schools. Not that we don't have safe schools, but it means safer schools. It means getting the best teachers, and if that means raising the supplement, then we need to price mediocrity out of the market. This needs to be the premier place for teachers and professionals outside of education in the state. Otherwise, we're just going to grow based on the shrinkage of the counties around us. If you look at every county that touches our borders, every one of them shrinking, and a lot of people are coming here, and they're not bringing jobs with them. And until we're ready to commit to become a community of choice, and that means invested in parks, it means invested in education, it means invested in safety, it means doing more than just what we've been doing, which is just paying the bills. But we're not going to have the growth in the base that we need until we make those investments. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Beth?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's anyone in here who doesn't know that I've been an educator almost half of my life, and not just in the public schools, but also at the university. So a lot of the people that are teaching in your school, I taught, and some of your principals I taught over at East Carolina. You know, $500,000 doesn't sound like a lot. We have a different reason for having the fund balance at the something I didn't understand when I used to come up here and do exactly what you all have done tonight. There are reasons why counties need to keep their fund balance. They can't borrow money if it's not at a certain percentage. And that money that we borrow builds your schools and, you know, furnishes whatever else needs to be done and these other taxes that we have that we don't get. So without being able to borrow money to build the schools, because if you heard as we went quickly over the budget, I forgot what the amount is that we're paying per month. And we're still paying for the new schools and the renovated schools and those sorts of things. I would never want this group of commissioners, and I don't think any of you out there feel that way, that this is not an education-focused board, because it has been and always has been since I've been on here. Education has been number one. And I remember back when there were many counties in the state of North Carolina, many counties who reduced the funding for their schools each year for almost 5 years because of the downfall of the economy. That never happened in Pitt County. We have never reduced the amount of money. It has gone up every year. Listening tonight makes us really look like the bad guys. I mean, if we put an SRO in every school, there were many schools that a lot of damage was done in that had SROs. And I wish that I thought one thing would make a difference, that big a difference. And I totally understand you all being here. I'm a mother and a grandmother, so I've been in those seats also. So I'm not going to advocate, I'm not going to push any harder than I did second the motion, because I think this is a good budget. I would hope that the red light money would get close to $500,000, and that would be exactly where you would send it, as important as it is to these people. I really think setting up the almost $1 million that we contributed towards the safety, and that was late in the budget process. We got that done because that was something we recognized as really being needed. And I've said it before, I don't want teachers carrying guns. I don't want principals carrying guns. And I will always feel that way. But anyway, I have expressed mine. I'm in favor of this budget. I think it's a well put together budget. And we have to cover a lot of things in this county, and I think we've really done well by the schools.
Thank you, Beth. We have a motion that's been made and seconded, and I think everyone's had an opportunity to discuss and see what their feelings were. All in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed, like, got that count?
Yes, that passes.
All right. Any further business for the board tonight?
No, sir.
All right. Once again, we want to thank each of you for coming. Continue the good work, and we will hope that we'll be able to contribute in that way too. Have a good night.